How you set it up? So like, have like.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Rutherford Board of Education for April 8th, 2019. I would ask everyone present to please stand and pledge the flag behind us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and thank you for attending this evening. The first order of business, ask the secretary to please call the roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Present.
Dr. Olati, Mr. Healy,
Here.
Mrs. Jones,
Present.
Mrs. Librera,
Here.
Mr. Mazzone,
Here.
Dr. Racine,
Here.
Mr. Rowland,
Here.
Mr. McLean.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Rutherford Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place posted on the bulletin board outside of the Borough Clerk's office, mailed to the Herald, South Bergenite, and Record newspapers, and filed with the Borough Clerk. Hard copies of the agenda are available in this meeting room, and the agenda is posted electronically on the Friday before the meeting date on the district's website at www.rutherfordschools.org. Regular meetings of the Rutherford Board of Education will be broadcast without editing during a 2-hour segment as limited by Comcast time constraints on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. and on Comcast Public Access Channel and on Comcast Public Access Channel and on FiOS Channel 38. A video of the meeting may also be viewed at our website, www.rutherfordschools.org. The video link can be found by opening the Board of Education link and clicking on Public Meetings and then Videos. Any member of the public who wishes to view a DVD of this meeting can make that request in writing to the Board Secretary. Board members, you received in your packets the minutes from our regular meeting of March 18th, 2019, and the executive session of that same evening. Were there any corrections or modifications suggested for those minutes? Hearing none, I would ask the secretary to please enter them into the record and post them. And we move now, not having a student representative with us this evening, we have one special presentation on mindfulness at Union School, and we have 2 presenters. So we'd ask Mr. Schweitzer and Abby Rabinovich to please come forward. And I'll get out of the way since I think I'm sitting in front of something that is more interesting to look at than me.
Good evening, Mr. Hurley, Mr. Kelly, Board of Education members. Tonight we're going to present to you mindfulness. It's an initiative that we have at Union School that we've been working on this year. Mrs. Rabinovich is going to explain the program, so enjoy the slideshow. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So we've met before, but just to reintroduce myself, I'm Abby Rabinovich. I'm the guidance counselor at Union School. We have been preparing this year for something that we're very excited about, the mindfulness program at Union School. So we've been testing it out this year. We've been starting to put it together, and we're hoping to implement it in full force next year. So we've been hearing a lot about mindfulness come up lately, across different districts, different programs people are using. Some schools are putting yoga in schools, some are meditating. So in order to really understand what mindfulness is, we have to define it and we have to learn about it. So really, to be brief, to be mindful is just to be present in the moment without wanting to change anything. So sometimes we get really excited when things are really great and we hold on to it and we develop this attachment. And then when something's really terrible or not so comfortable, we worry that it's always going to be that way, and it can cause feelings of anxiety or depression. So to really experience what you're going through, whether it's good or bad, to just kind of embrace all those feelings is what mindfulness is, rather than letting those feelings and those emotions control us. We can take control of them. There's a ton of research out there on the effects of mindfulness, that it will help strengthen the parts of the brain that are responsible for decision making, for our interpersonal skills, developing empathy, helps us to decrease our impulsivity, and my favorite is to connect to a greater sense of purpose. So we're not just here for ourselves, we're here for something bigger and more important. So our goal at Union School is really to put this in place, because the students are developing all of those skills at this age. Those important skills in the brain that help them rationalize, not to just jump into a decision or act out, rather take their time to breathe, to think about what is the more appropriate way to act, plan goals for themselves, and really just to provide a space for them to be able to reflect and do that. It's a great opportunity for students with anxiety or depression or behavioral issues to have a space, rather than just taking the discipline approach or just meeting with a counselor, to have a space in the building they feel comfortable to reflect on what they're feeling and to grow from it. So here are some pictures, hopefully you can see, of the center that we already started putting into works. We like to use some dim lighting. We have yoga mats. We have these nice comfortable seats. So we do have space for some yoga or some light stretching. Not necessarily practicing yoga, really, if the students or staff want to help release some of that stress or tension that we carry in our bodies. The students can go in there in groups. This is something that we started practicing this year, was bringing counseling groups in there, and it definitely helps them relax, which allows them to open up and communicate better with each other. Aside from the Mindfulness Center in the building, it's also going to be an initiative throughout the entire school. So as you can see in the pictures, we'll have some programs throughout the day for the entire gym is filled with kids and they're practicing some yoga poses. And then we have some breathing techniques that the students are doing in the classroom to help them then engage better, because they'll be in a more calm place. And now we get to meditate together. So I'm going to guide you all through a guided meditation. This is something I personally love to do. I'm just going to go turn the music on.
Yes.
So first, what we're going to do just for a minute is to kind of work on our meditating posture, make sure we're sitting correctly in our seats, get the most out of the meditation, and then we'll just do a brief 5-minute meditation. Has anyone meditated before? Yes. First, what I want you to do is to lean back in your seat and really feel your feet plant against the floor. Okay, so I want you to lift your toes up off of the floor and just feel the bottom of your foot really press against the floor. Go around all the edges of your foot and then slowly lower one toe at a time. Really feeling your feet against the earth. And you want to imagine that there's a string pulling your feet down into the earth. And then as we move up through the body, relaxing the legs, straightening the spine, feeling your shoulders pull back. And then I want on an inhale all of us to raise our shoulders up to our ears. So deep inhale. And then roll the shoulders back, exhale. And really pulling the shoulders down, feeling that stretch open the chest. Closing our eyes. If you feel like you start to lose your posture during the meditation, then I want you to remember that string that's pulling your feet down into the ground, and then I want you to imagine a string at the top of your head, pulling your head up towards the sky. So really from both ends, you're getting that full stretch. It's going to lengthen your body and lengthen your spine. This will help you get more oxygen in as you breathe. It'll also help generally with posture, with back pain. So when we go into the meditation, it's important to always go back to the breath, because a lot of times our minds will wander and we'll think about something that happened earlier today that we can't quite get off of our mind, or something we're worried about tomorrow. And that's okay, because we can't help thoughts that come across our mind. But what we can do is just let them pass by us. So imagine that our thoughts are like clouds in the sky. And when one comes into your mind, you can acknowledge it and then just let it go. And always go back to your breath. So take notice of your breath. Not trying to change it. Just notice where it is in the body. Is it short? Is it stuck anywhere? And then slowly slow down the breath. Muscles in your feet and in your legs, relaxing the muscles in your spine, up to your shoulders and your arms, releasing any tension in your neck, releasing the muscles in your face, and just breathe. slowly bringing the awareness back into your body, wiggling the fingers and the toes. You can roll your neck from side to side. And when you're ready, opening the eyes. So one last time, I just want us to take, when we take a deep inhale, to roll our shoulders all the way up. And exhale, roll the shoulders back down, just for a nice stretch. And just remember, if you're ever feeling stressed or overwhelmed and you have a million thoughts going on, just take a second to remember your breath, always. It's the one thing you can always go back to help calm yourself down, lower your heart rate, and bring yourself to a more peaceful place. That's it.
So the implementation will begin with the school next school year for all grades?
In the middle school.
Yeah, we've been practicing it this year as well. So one of our goals this year was creating the Mindfulness Center, which we've established. We're continuing to work on, as you can see in the pictures. So what Mrs. Rabinovich does, she'll take some groups up there and do some sessions with them as well. With our PBIS program, we were able to actually have the whole gym full and do a meditation just like we did tonight with them. And the kids really enjoyed it. As you can see, it makes them nice and relaxed, and they're ready to go when they have to, go to their next class. It takes away a lot of the anxiety that they might have as well. So we've seen a lot of positive, attributes to the program, and we're excited to continue to implement it next year as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't think our mics are on. Is your mic on?
Yeah,
Mine's
not
on.
on very loud. Any questions or comments from members of the board?
I just think it's going to be interesting in a couple of years because Lincoln School and Washington School have the program, I think in kindergarten center also, so that you might really see a whole new, what doing.
Right, that articulation is going to be great for the program and really build it up, as they come up through the grade levels.
I think what I liked last year when the Lincoln School gave their presentation was it helped them so much with the testing.
Yeah.
Yes. And that I think I remember as a kid, so many kids get, really
The test
nervous about
anxiety,
that.
yeah.
So it's really wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to comment that I know I've done a lot of critical incident stress debriefing for first responders, and I was first exposed to the meditation just after the Vegas shooting. And I have to say that the impact that it had making it available for the first response community was instrumental. So much so that I know both the Clark County Coroner's Office, the New York City Chief Medical Examiner's Office now encourage their staff. They've dedicated rooms for meditation and really giving them an opportunity to disconnect once a day. Put your devices down, walk away from it, take 15 to 30 minutes to yourself. So I applaud it.
If I could just add, I'm sorry, Ms. Ahmed.
It must have been like 5 years ago. I worked with special ed children in a school, and they had the gym teacher come in to the classrooms and give them yoga. And they made, out of cardboard, like a sign for the door, yoga and practice, you can't come in. And children who wouldn't sit down, sat down. When they went on the playground, if they were getting into an argument, they would say these words and they would just calm down and get along with each other. It really made a big difference in their behavior.
Absolutely.
This afternoon at about 3:15 to about 4:30, we had a workshop for Mr. Schweitzer and Mr. Rabinovich were there. Most of our counselors, child study team members, our SACs, our administrators, some of our teachers, and it was from the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, who had a grant with Care Plus, which is a health facility, mental emotional health facility, and it was about mindfulness. It was about things to do to reduce stress, anxiety in students. Different a little bit from what we saw here, but again, the same umbrella, the same topic. Programs like this are at various degrees of of fruition in all of our buildings, where we have wellness, mindfulness. There's a lot of different terms that are all connected. Grit, growth mindset, they're all somewhat connected. And if you've been reading the articles in the New York Times, the Atlantic Monthly, in many publications, there was one Sunday in the Bergen Record about the growth of anxiety. They tie it to, some of it ties it to social media, some of it ties it to the video games, some of it ties it to the pressures that kids are feeling. But the reality is, it's higher. The Care Plus today presented figures where they have over, correct me if I'm wrong, about 1,000 more referrals to regional facilities for students countywide, just in Bergen County, than they had the year before. So programs like this are, I think, important to reduce stress, to teach coping mechanisms, to teach students that the world doesn't end if you have a bad grade or a bad day, and there's ways to get through that. So our administrators and our counselors have really taken this and worked to develop it within the framework of our curriculum and our space and age appropriately. And I think it's been very successful so far, and it's going to even grow to be even more successful. So I applaud them for what they've done.
Wonderful.
And I would just say that, right as we started, I did a text message, which you would never see me do during a meeting, with this one exception. And you may know this, my daughter, Katie, is in Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, where she sought this school after getting her master's and her thesis in mindfulness and wellness and education. And she's the mindfulness coordinator for an international school in Vietnam. And so they're just 12 hours off. She's just getting to work, and I sent her a little text that we were doing a mindfulness presentation about Union School, and just to brighten her day as she started. But other than the possible, maybe questionable impressions that people walking in late thought, seeing the Board of Ed sitting here with our eyes closed, and those who might tune in to the Comcast presentation on Tuesday night at 8:10 and wonder if we're all sleeping. It really was a very, really enjoyed the, we should start all the meetings like that. But we truly appreciate the coming in and sharing this with us.
Well, thank you. We thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Well done. So then moving on to the report of the superintendent, please.
Sure, thank you. Just a few items tonight. The website that was created for facilities and for the last referendum is currently under renovation. Looking ahead to potentially another referendum and looking ahead to the changes in plans that have already been discussed and have been sent down to Trenton. We're working to update, revise, and retool the website. So if you go to that website, or if you go to the district's website, you'll see that it says we're going to be back up on or about May 13th or 14th, as we're working to retool that. 2 meetings ago, I believe, Matt Lee was here talking about the superintendent's evaluation, the CSA evaluation. I will do my part of that, just for the board members, on the week of April 21st, 22nd, whatever the shutdown week is. I'll be in a couple of days that week, and I'll get that done. And then once I get done and I submit it, you get notified that you can go on and do your part. And I believe we're going to do that first meeting on the 29th, right?
Yes.
Okay. So just to update you all on that. Our summer programs, registration has begun for those programs, and that's, Jump Start. And this year we're adding that other program, that summer enhancement or enrichment program, Summer Enrichment Academy. And so right now we're at 7 students in STEM, 10 for the Enrichment Academy, 24 for Jump Start. We just opened registration, so that's pretty much where we were last year at this time. And kindergarten registration, we have 91 completed. We have 38 who have pre-registered, which they do online. Again, that's pretty much where we were at this time last year. So we're on pace for similar numbers in those programs. Should we not have a snowstorm in the month of April, or a water main break, or a hurricane, or things of that nature, then we will not have used all of our snow days. So the calendar, as approved, with the Friday before Memorial Day being a day that the district is closed, will hold. So I'm just giving you a heads up on that. After the spring recess, I'll put something out to the school community saying that barring something unusual happening in the month of May, that day would be a day that the district is closed. Last year, and I believe the year before, we had exceeded our snow day number, so we did not have that benefit, I guess, for lack of a better word, in the calendar of the long holiday weekend. And we talked about the backfield. The work is being done this week. It was pushed back by the vendor once again by 2 weeks, but they're here. If you came in the back, you saw the apparatus out there. And it's probably a right, Ms. Kelly, 3-day job, something like that?
Yeah, 3 tops.
3 tops. And that oil tank that was in a private home behind Union School, right, the one that was abandoned years ago that we have to get out, we're going to look to do that the week of shutdown. That, again, that's like an oil tank that would come out. When I say shutdown, spring recess, that's an oil tank that would come out of a private home, because that's what it was. And we'll get that out when schools close the week of April 21st. Okay? And for now, that's it.
Any questions for the superintendent regarding his report? None. I'll move on to report of the president, which will be even more brief. Year-end activity, well, you discussed the CSA evaluation that we'll work on. The year-end activities, April and May, really start ramping up with concerts, with art shows, with other activities, some of which we're invited to participate in, and encourage everyone to do that to the most, highest level of that you can. And if you're scheduled to do something on behalf of the board and it turns out that you cannot do that, just contact myself or Mr. Hurley, and we'll organize a substitute. The couple of the events coming up in short order, Friday the 12th, there's a Uncorked at the Castle event being run by the Community Chest, and they use that to raise scholarship monies for Rutherford High School students and for St. Mary's students. So if any of you have seen an invite to that, that's an interesting and enjoyable evening. The REF wine tasting is on May 4th, and all are encouraged to participate in that. And the REA negotiations, our negotiations team has met since our last meeting, has met twice, and we've had 2 negotiation sessions, all of which have been very productive and a very constructive environment, and we'll give you some more detail of that in executive session. That's it for me. If there's any questions or yes.
One question on the superintendent evaluation. Are we going to stick to the end of May getting it done? Do you want to establish a day when board members have to finish it?
Well, so there were 3 touch points, right? There was the we have even if the superintendent's finished, or once he's finished his part of it and we start filling out ours, we have to meet and just formally confirm the process. We'll do that on the 29th of April. And then once all of our individual assessments are submitted, I'll compile them and we'll meet on
June, whatever that first Monday, June 5th, is it?
You have a board meeting on June 3rd. That's
June
the meeting
3rd.
we would normally meet without the superintendent.
Right.
You would write to the superintendent.
Yes, and
then
I need to check. I may have to be overseas, so I have to because I had a trip change. But
all right. Well, then the 24th would be the last meeting to do it before
right,
July 1st.
Right. So
That
we'll
would have to be
yeah,
clear.
we'll work.
But I'm just saying, do you have a date when all board members must complete the
Well,
evaluation?
can I suggest, let's make sure, because remember that oops button they talked about, right?
Right.
Let's make sure I complete everything that week.
Okay.
And if I do, then, you want to say May 15th? Gives everybody like 3
May
weeks.
20th, maybe? Give them a couple
Fif-
more days?
Ma-
It's 4 weeks the board members would have to finish.
May 20th?
Yeah, that should be. I mean, I think that's enough time.
Okay, and I know you'll get an email from school boards, but if and when I complete it, I'll email everyone to say I'm completed, and I'll remind
Right, it comes
everyone
out,
that
yeah.
you'll get an email from school boards on May 20th, okay?
Fine. Thank you.
So it is 8:02 PM, and we will open the floor for public comment for items that are on the agenda only at this point. So any comments regarding items which are on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll close the floor for comments on the agenda items, and we will move into actions to be taken under new business and under personnel. Would you take us through that, Mrs. Smith?
Surely, Mr. President. We'll be moving, hopefully we'll be moving tonight for your approval. The following motions: 1, Lois Stutter, and 2, Samantha Castro, to accept their resignations. 3, termination of Jose Bernaldez. 4, Sheila Palomino, to approve her as a part-time assistant teacher at Pierpont. And 5, Evelyn Pino, to approve her as an increase of teacher assistant and increase of hours. 6, Rufina Rodriguez, to approve leave of absence under the Family Leave Act. 7, summer STEM experience, to approve Timothy Ajala for summer STEM program experience program. 8, to approve coordinator summer elementary programs, Darlene Monticello. 9, substitute teachers, 9 and 10 would be Hadel and Kalanya. 1 is to approve for following substitute teachers on 9, and 10 is also to approve them as following substitute teacher assistants, the same names. 11, home tutoring ABA services for Mamada Prebu and Patricia Urdez. And 12, Jennifer Maloney, to establish maternity leave under the Family Leave Act. 13, travel reimbursements for Judith Leonard. And I ask for a motion to approve motions 1 to 13.
Any questions? Dr. Racine? Seconds. So you've moved them, and Dr.
Yeah.
Racine has seconded? And any questions or comments on the motions in front of us, then? Mrs. Rivera?
Just want to make one comment. I noticed Mr. Studer's resignation is on the agenda tonight. I've had the pleasure to work with him as one of my son's teachers, and I know many others in the community who've really appreciated all the guidance and dedication that he's given to the district over the years. So I know he's not the only resignation on the agenda tonight, but it's certainly one that I wanted to mention, given my own personal experience. So.
Very good. Thank you.
And just to remind the board, Mr. Studer is the Washington School recipient of the Teacher of the Year this year. Will be honored at the end of the year.
Very good. No other comments or questions? We'd ask the secretary to please pull the board.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Librera?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on then to curriculum and instruction, Mrs. Jones.
There are 9 resolutions under curriculum and instruction for our board members' consideration. Resolutions 1 through 3 need affirmation of the superintendent's decisions for 3 HIVs. Resolution 4 is approval for the adoption of the comprehensive equity plan for the years 2019 and 2020 through 21 and 2022. Resolutions 5 and 6 are for curriculum writers. The first one for Title I program, and the second one for the Summer Enrichment Academy program. Resolution 7 is out-of-district placements, on which the attached list. Resolution 8 is the approval of field trips, another 158 for the school year 2018 and 19. And resolution number 9 is for home instruction for 1 student.
Any comments before the motions are formally, or the resolutions are formally moved? Questions, comments? No?
Do you want to say anything about the comprehensive equity?
No, the comprehensive equity plan is every 3 years we have to revisit it, redo it. Every year we have to give a statement of assurance that it's in existence. And essentially it's it's informing the board, informing the county and the state that we have all the policies that are in place to provide equity and fairness to both faculty, staff, students, anyone who is a part of the school community.
I move resolutions 1 through 9 under curriculum and instruction.
Seconded by
Second.
Mr. Healy. Last chance for comments. Ask the secretary to please poll the board.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Lebrera?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Finance, please, Dr. Racine.
Yes. There have been no meetings since our last board meeting, and there are 7 motions to approve tonight. The first is the approval of bills. The second is Secretary Treasury Report for February 2019. Third are to approve budget transfers. The fourth is to approve the food service agreement with Rutherford Board of Ed. 5 is to approve the service charge for the lunches to be purchased. 6 is to set the student lunch prices, so 4, 5, and 6 go together. And 7 is to approve the cooperative transportation agreement for 1920 with Gloucester County Special School Services.
Mr. Kelly, perhaps you'd just explain for the record 4, 5, and 6?
Yeah, number 4, 5, and 6 are establishing the lunch prices for next year. Number 4 is the price we are paying to Becton, the Carlstadt East Rutherford's Board of Ed. They raised their prices by 25 cents per meal, so we raised our prices to the parents by 25 cents a meal. Same thing with the milk. They raised it by 10 cents. We raised it by 10 cents. We did, the service charge is ours, has nothing to do with Becton, but that's the credit card ordering fee. We raised that from $2 to $2.50, and that fee has never covered the costs involved with running the ordering system. So we get a little bit closer this time, but that's what that is.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions regarding these 7 resolutions? I'd ask you to
I'd
formally.
like to move motions 1 through 7 in finance.
And seconded by Mr. Mazzone. Last chance questions or comments? Having none, ask the secretary to please poll the board.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Lebrera?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Healy, do we have anything under policy this evening?
No, we did not have a policy committee meeting since our last board meeting, and there are no motions for this evening.
Thank you. Any questions regarding policy? Moving then to buildings and grounds. Mr. Mazzone?
Yes, so we have not had a building and grounds meeting since our last board meeting. I have one motion to put forward, and that is a donation from the Kindergarten Center PTA for the purchase of a picnic table to be used by students and staff at the Kindergarten Center for a value of $1,034.48. That is the only motion I have, and I'll put that motion forward.
Seconded by Mrs. Jones. Any questions or comments regarding this motion? Hearing none, ask the secretary to please poll the board.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes, and thank you, PTA.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Lebrera?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Moving then, that finishes our new business where action will be taken for the evening. So moving on to old business or any business. Is any member of the board? Yes, Mrs. Jones?
It was a great pleasure to attend the Union School play Alice in Wonderland Jr. It was wonderful seeing Mamma Mia, where Sergio Letti's daughter Julia had the lead role and was fabulous. Max Maison was in this one. Colleen Fenchick's Danny was in it. Amelia Perlmutter, that's Quinn Cassavetes. It was fabulous. They do such a wonderful job. And one more thing, on March 29th, I attended the Bergen and Passaic County meetings. This is once a year when the two have a combined meeting, and it's always an advocacy. So we had Senator Gerald Cardinal, Senator Christian M. Corrado, Assemblyman Quentin Calabrese, and Assemblyman Kevin Rooney, and Christopher D. Phillips attended. There was talk about several things. There's tomorrow night there is active shooter training for parents at Beckton that they wanted to mention. The one thing that came up throughout the entire meeting was board members said, you have to help us with the school funding, which has been a cry as long as I've been a board member, so I'm 20 years. And the other thing was help us with our special education students that are out of district. And when it came down to it, and I was really happy to see this because I think we really should do this, they said when anybody really wants things, and other than education, they get a bus of people and they come down there and we tell them when it's going to be on, and they lobby. And Gerald Cardinal, who's been around for an awful long time, is saying, you want this? We're not able to push it any more than we have. I mean, part of it was a little bit disappointing, but I'm beginning to think that that's what it's going to take.
So you're talking
They
about
haven't
organizing
actually
at the
organized
county
it
levels?
yet. Well, they might do it. They might just, send out to all boards on a day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Obviously, a lot of people won't be able to make it, but some board members maybe to get, to go down there and advocate just for state paying for out-of-district special ed students.
Mm-hmm.
We all know that when we get a surprise and a student comes in there, that can wreck anybody's budget. So,
I always enjoy attending meetings that the politicians are at, and and they say things like, you need to lobby more. The Superintendent's Association, the Business Administrators Association, the State Athletic Association, the State Teachers Association, the State Principals and Supervisors Associations have lobbyists who attend and actually stay in Trenton and are in these people's ear all the time. I would also say that the busloads of people that come down, you have to read the fine print when they have their hearings. Because unlike a board meeting where any member of the public wants to come to the board, speak, they can. Usually at these legislative hearings, you have to sign up in advance. And if you go down, like many people have done, and you haven't signed up in advance, you can't speak. So I think it is important to lobby, but I just don't want disappointed people on that bus trip if we go down and you can't speak. I think, we just got something today I shared with Mr. Kelly regarding some training and discussion about school funding, especially in regards to things like special ed and things like trying to balance some of the inequities that have been brought up from the past. It still comes down to where's the money coming from. And that's an issue that they have a hard time finding, where the money's coming from. And, to a lesser scale, this is what we deal with here, right? What you folks deal with here as a board. There's certain needs we have, and then where's the money coming from? But it's, I think the important thing, though, is being heard. And I just want everybody to know that, and the school boards have folks that are there. All these groups are down there.
Yeah, no.
And they're working at it to try to get a fair shake for the districts and for the students. So I think anything that anybody could do is helpful.
Other comments regarding that? No?
One more bit of old business.
Yes.
Just a reminder that our end of the year celebration for faculty, staff, board members, honoring the retirees, the service award recipients, and the teachers of the year is June 13th, and there was a flyer sent in your packet. If you're interested in going, the information's there.
Thank you. Mr. Rowland, is there a legislative update?
I have a short legislative update regarding the measles outbreak in both Ocean County, New Jersey, and in upstate New York, Rockland County. There was a temporary ban in New York, but not in New Jersey, that lasted 10 days before they realized that they can't enforce it under their laws, so the ban was lifted. But it's a reminder for everyone to be educated on the importance of vaccinations. The CDC had put out, before there were vaccinations, there were about 500,000 cases in the United States each year. And after vaccinations started and were established to being more than 90% of the school populations, the cases of measles went down to 400 to 500 per year. So it's a very powerful reminder that it stopped hospitalizations and deaths. So please be educated about vaccinations. That's all.
Thank you. So moving just slightly faster than a fast break at an NCAA championship game. It is 8, that's shameless, I'm sorry. It is 8:18, and we will open the floor to any member of the public wishing to make a comment on any subject.
Good evening, Mr. Hurley, Board of Education. My name is Cecily Trelongo. This is Linda Griffin. We are members of the Rutherford Lacrosse Association.
And just as a point of policy, if you would give us your address for the record as well, please.
147 West Pierpont.
188 Eastern Way.
Okay. And just as another point of policy, we have about a 3-minute limit on comment, but
You got it.
we'll try to be as liberal as we can.
You got it. We bring in the girls. They just had a game, the 5-6. They beat Maplewood. This past weekend, the boys teams, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, beat Nutley. We have about 170 kids in our program at the moment. We are still finalizing our numbers for the K-1 program. We're coming up with those shortly. Many of our parents have been inquiring where we're headed. I know you have spoken with Jen Sullivan, but I know that people in the town are interested where this is headed.
That's your statement, yes. Mr. Morano actually spoke. I had a conversation with Jen Sullivan, but just to advise her to speak with Mr. Morano and Mr. DeFrazier, which I think she did last year on 2 occasions, and maybe somebody else was involved as well. In terms of a program at the high school, one of the things, and again, I wasn't prepared to speak to this tonight, so I'm going to do the best I can from memory, and also from memory as a coach and as a high school principal. But in speaking with Mr. Morano and Mr. Frazier, the way you begin a program is to make sure you're going to have a program that's going to be sustainable, number one. Number two, that you don't expect your program in year one it would be wonderful if it could be year one as a very successful program, but there's usually growing pains. But you want to make it where it's competitive enough and sustainable enough that the kids who are there don't then drop off, and you have it for 1 year and you don't have it a second year. And there are some high schools in the area, who I won't say publicly, who did that. They rushed the program. The way, and just to give you a little sense of history also, it almost seems unbelievable that I was here as a coach and a supervisor at a time that girls soccer was not in the high school. And we had to begin a girls soccer program, which is now one of our strongest programs yearly, going on for decades. And we began it the same way. So you look to see when you're going to have numbers for 2 years. So in other words, if there's an incoming 9th grade class that has 18 players coming from a program, 16 players, 14 players coming from a program, where you can field a team, and the 8th grade behind has 19 kids, and the 7, and so on and so forth. So then year 1 becomes a freshman team, and then year 2 becomes a sub-varsity team, and by year 3, you have a varsity and a sub-varsity team. But you have to see the program growing and the numbers there in those grade levels. And I think when Mr. Frazier and Mr. Morano met with Ms. Sullivan and whoever else was in the meeting, there was some projections there about, well, this is how many students and players we have now in grade 7, but these are how many are in grade 4 or 5. And, I'm not the best person to predict how things are going to turn out, right? But it's obvious to me with the numbers of students that we have, very similar to girls soccer 25 years ago. And with the success and the interest and the growth of the program, that there's going to be a program at the high school. It's just a question of looking when those numbers are going to make, you don't want to start it and have it fall by the wayside. And also, so the community, and this could be returned, this may be anecdotal, but it really isn't. I don't think there's anybody who understands how to build a lacrosse program better than Mr. Morano. He was a Division I college player. He was a varsity high school coach, and he currently trains teams and organizes in other programs how to get a program going. So, you know, lacrosse is something that is a passion for him. Now, you know, I don't want anybody to think that if an administrator likes something, that's what's going to happen, right? Because Mr. Morano likes, you know, Italian food, too. He's not putting Italian cooking class in the curriculum. But, you know, we understand where this is going. We understand where it's going to be, right? We're not unhappy about that, but we have to make sure that there's, as I explained, that ability to say you're going to have a sustainable program. I know there's people who worry every time a new program comes in. It may take away from other programs. We had one of the strongest volleyball teams in Bergen County prior to girls soccer, and after girls soccer, which is one of the stronger small school soccer programs in Bergen County, we still have one of the strongest girls volleyball team. So I don't believe that adding a program is going to take away from another. There may be a few kids less, but the students who are track athletes, baseball athletes, softball athletes, they're going to still run track, play baseball and softball, and lacrosse athletes are going to have a chance to play lacrosse. But it's got to be done at the right time. And I get it if you're in the 8th grade and you know that ship may sail, or you may be able to jump on board when you're a senior. I know that's tough, but you probably aren't going to last 4 years on a team that doesn't have a team. It has to be done correctly. So that's the best answer I can give you right now. And I think, you know, I can't predict when it's going to happen, but I can predict that it's probably going to happen sooner than later. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. And are there any other members of the public who would like to address the board on any topic at this point?
Can I add one more thing to the lacrosse program? Because I see the one male over here, okay? I'm not just talking about girls lacrosse, right? I'm talking about boys and girls lacrosse, right?
He's my son's really good friend.
Yeah.
We're here representing the boys
Right.
as well tonight.
Right. Well, we're talking about the program, the boys and girls program. And, you know, and if the girls program, and again, this is very hypothetical, right? I mean, they don't have to all come in at the same time. If the boys program is a year ahead of the girls or a year behind the girls, but it's the same process that we're looking at, right? In terms of the numbers, the grade level numbers, the projections of when you can start to build a program. Because, you know, one of the things that we have in our athletic program is that it's a program where students hopefully go from freshman through senior year. They're part of an experience of building a team and the camaraderie, all the things that go with it. We don't want it to be a one-year-and-done activity for the program, right? So the same response that I gave to the young ladies who were here, the male representative who's here tonight, that's the same response for you, okay? That's how we're going to look at it, okay? Well, again, I don't know the numbers. Right. Well, you have to see where the numbers are. They may have done it for 3 years, but if you don't have that 9th grade class that can run a team, it's looking at the numbers. And again, I don't have that with me here. I can't tell you that, but that's the process, okay? And if you have any questions, okay, contact Mr. Frazier and Mr. Moreno. I mean, they're more than willing. I know they've sat down with people and had emails with people. They're more than willing to discuss this. It's not something that they're unaware of or they're not looking ahead to possibly address. Okay?
Mr. Hurley, there's a man they wanted to talk about.
Yes. So if you would please just name and address and then address.
Vincent Silvestri, Mountain Way. Would we be best served to come prepared with more information next go-around for the next BOE?
The boards, and again, the board acts upon recommendations that come from me to them. So you could do that, but then I'm going to go back and share those numbers with the athletic director, and the principal. So I think your best bet is to have a conversation with the athletic director and the principal. And then, depending on the outcome of that meeting, right? If you don't understand, or you're not satisfied, or you have other questions, you could then contact me, right? And then if you still feel that, dissatisfaction or unclarity, you come to the board. Because ultimately, if you come here, and again, if I'm speaking out of turn, please, if you come here next week and say, well, we have 14, 7th grade, or whatever the case may be, the board is going to say, well, go back and talk to Mr. Frazier and Mr. Morano. So I would have the conversation there.
Because I do, and I appreciate your concerns, and I hear you talking about numbers and sustainability. I do think the program has grown over the past few years. I do think my son's in 8th grade. The numbers for the kids below him are greater every year. And I don't have the information. I'm not prepared to talk numbers, but if you're telling me the right person is to speak with, who exactly?
Mr. Frazier, who's our athletic director, right, and Mr. Morano, who's the high school principal. But to the point, if your son is, but if your son is a 8th grader and there's only and I don't know, I could be totally wrong.
Sure.
Hypothetically, there's only a handful of students, kids in 8th grade playing, right? If by the time he's a sophomore or by the time he's a junior, should there be a team, it's not like he can't join the team at that point. So it's trying to look at a 2 or 3 year window of enrollment, potential enrollment. That's what they're looking at.
Sure, and again, I appreciate it, and we will do that. I do think your concern about sustainability, I get it. I think we all get that. Having a team and having that option is going to recruit more kids at the lower level to keep that program going. I think we're in agreement about that. But,
And the other thing to keep in mind is especially on the boys' side, it's a physical game. Sure. It's probably, I think, more physical in some ways than football because there's less pads, and football players aren't carrying a stick and not playing with a hard ball, right? It's a game where and I coached for 23 years, not lacrosse, but other sports. If you have students who don't know the game playing against students who do, and there's an attrition rate there we have to worry about. So I think we're all in agreement that the need for a program is coming. It's just when to get it going. And I think the best place, again, to have that conversation would be with the athletic director and the principal. And I'll certainly inform them of the conversations we had tonight and what my responses were, and tell them to expect maybe to hear from people again. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And just to expand a little, since we've got a kind of captive audience here, it's a good chance to expand a little bit on what Mr. Hurley said, because I think by and large, most people who have never come to a Board of Education meeting, and that does include, by the way, most people, but most people who have you really aren't familiar with the Board of Ed, maybe don't understand the function of the Board of Ed and the makeup of the Board of Ed. So we're all neighbors of yours in town. That's the requirement, that we be neighbors, or that we be residents in town. And by law, in the code of ethics that we have to swear to when we take, the seat, we do not run the district. Our mission is to see that the district is run well, and we do that by hiring professionals that are familiar with the educational environment, obviously the business of education environment, and then they hire people like our athletic director. So I think in general, most agree that we do have very competent leadership and people in our buildings, and I know they're open to listening. They want to see programs grow. We know that funding is always an issue, but that doesn't stop certainly this Board of Ed from moving ahead as best we can, because we know that it's the richness of the totality of our programs, not just our academic rigor, that make Rutherford Schools what it is. And so continue with the efforts. Sure.
Can I just say one more?
Yes, please.
So it sounds like there's a path forward in terms of the conversation and the next steps with respect to sharing the information and sort of looking at the horizon. But I just do want to thank everybody who came out tonight, because I see there's a lot of students and a lot of parents and a lot of people who care about building a new program in town, and while there is, it sounds like a path to have those conversations outside of this meeting. I certainly appreciate hearing from the community about this program that's obviously of a lot of interest and having a significant impact on the lives of a lot of folks in the room. So thanks for coming.
Thank you. Yes, Mrs. Smith.
Well, having 3 boys myself and been around to every baseball game and football game, I'm so glad to see girls here and asking for something that I really believe, you know, this town needs more girl programs. And I'm so impressed at it. I went to one game that my son had in baseball, and across the field was a lacrosse game, and I thought it was really rough. I don't know how you girls, I'm glad you're ready to get out there and fight, you know. But I just want to thank you again. It's nice to see a whole bunch of girls come out and really root for something that they want to do, and I think it's a great idea. Keep trucking.
Are there any other members of the public who would wish to make a comment on any subject? Thank you.
Frank Wilson, 171 Montrose. This just has to be that I noticed the budget's coming up in 2-3 weeks. We have an advertisement in the paper for a payroll person, as far as what I saw. What I'd like to bring up to everybody here is, I don't know if you know, but there was a study that was done in 1997 when Christy Whitman was the governor. And she basically ripped through Rutherford about where we can save money and suggestions and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that was in here was that position be done by ADP to save money. And if we would have enacted that, but obviously whoever was retired, but that spot over 20 years would have saved us about $1.2 million. So now that the spot's open, and there was a recommendation that that's where we go 20 years ago, if anybody wants to see it, I have the whole file of this commission that was done. There's other things in here that we could have saved money on, which is the night differential for janitors. That would have saved us $500,000 over 20 years. This is 97 money, not current money. The other one would have been to renegotiate longevity increases, which would have saved about $1.2 million over 20 years. But the one in particular is this one, which is if we're actually going to hire, and 21 years ago, the state basically recommended that we don't do this, do we have a second chance to bite the apple and look for the savings for the next generation, which would probably be about $2 million over the next 20 years? I mean, I know I won't be standing here talking about it, but if you want to see this report, I can provide the full report to anybody that's not familiar with it. But it was commissioned in August of 1997. Christy Todd Whitman, governor. James, I can't pronounce his last name, treasurer, Borough of Rutherford. So we have a budget coming up. I don't want to see an increase. I would recommend you don't increase if you plan on squeezing another referendum through. But this is just something for you to gain some extra money where you may not have it. And that might be a teacher, that might be a lacrosse program that we just got you $60,000 back. There's money out there if you follow this thing. So if you want, I'll just show you the Heinz page, but if you want the full copy, give me your email address and I'll send it to you.
Thanks, sir. I'll take that. Do you need this back, or? No. Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilson. Thank you. Any further comment from public? Seeing none, at 8:36 we will close the floor for public comment. And we will need a motion for executive session to discuss 3 student matters and 2 contract issues, and expect to be gone about 15, what time's it? About 15 minutes, and no action will be taken. Do I have that motion, Mr. Mazzone? So moved.
seconded by Mrs. Jones. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We're in executive session.